And Richard is, maybe he doesn't know this, but he's one of my biggest role models. I love the Gene Keys. I almost could say that I'm obsessed with the Gene Keys, as I'm sure a lot of people are. And it's a beautiful art and transmission that he has created. I actually went through his course this year. It was beautiful. He has a course that's out where there's hundreds of people and everybody joins these calls and talks about their actual keys. And so he's going to be here sharing with us today. I think he's in the room right now. And he's going to be doing a little sharing, and it's going to be a lot of also Q&A. So I've prepared a bunch of questions. I know that a lot of you guys out there have questions that you want to ask Richard. He's filled with so much knowledge and so much wisdom. And we have the chance here to ask those questions. So this is extremely special. And Richard, I would love for you to introduce yourself, and it's great having you here.
Hi, Chelsea. Thank you for inviting me, and welcome to everyone. And you've obviously just had a wonderful session with Janet. I caught the end of it, and I certainly I would certainly like to build on that energy and bring it really down deep inside us and let it anchor. So let's make that the intention of this session. And the Gene Keys is all about that. So it's all about anchoring, and particularly in the belly, and coming into this point of deep wisdom and stillness inside ourselves. And out of that, our life force explodes and flows into the world. So I'm very happy to be here, and it's nice to see you all, and looking forward to sharing some time.
Thank you for being here, Richard. It's so special. So I'm sure that we have so many things that we could talk about, but with the world in the state that we're in, the gene key that's really speaking to me the most right now is gene key 55, and the shadow frequency of victimization and the city of liberation. And I think a lot of people right now are in fear states, and there's a lot happening in the world. And personally, this gene key gave me a lot of hope for the natural evolution of the world. And you talk about creativity ruling life, and we'll be experiencing life as art, which really speaks to me. And the body needing less salt, and being able to use light as our food source, and shifting into the solar plexus. I would love if you could talk about our state of the world right now, and as we awaken, how this gene key kind of plays into that.
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. I guess I'll back up and just for those of you who don't maybe know gene keys, describe in a nutshell what they're about and what they're for. Since you all seem like a very switched on group, I'll start at quite a kind of high level. There's a tradition in the Tibetan teachings called the tradition of the terma, and the terma refers to the word sort of means like a treasure, and a terma is a wisdom teaching that is revealed from the inner planes at a specific time in history for a specific purpose. And there are many forms of terma, and a lot of things like Reiki, for example, is a good example of perhaps a terma that has revealed itself to certain people at certain times, and then was built upon and grew and became an incredible lineage that's then carried out and continues into the world. And the gene keys is a terma like that, in that way, not in the traditional Tibetan way, but it's a good way of introducing them, because it's a big ball of living wisdom. and the wisdom is actually inside us. You know, it's inside the body, it's inside the physical body, it's inside the cells, inside the genes. It's all imprinted in us, and that's why it's called the gene keys. And so the teachings sort of center around a book called The Gene Keys, which I wrote, the big thick book here. And but then the teachings come alive, they stream out of that book, and the keys there are 64 of them, and they relate to codons in our DNA. We are built out of 64 codons, so we're a 64 code species, and the universe seems to be a 64 coded place as well, because that's a code that you see replicated in many living natural systems. It's also the basis of music, which in itself should tell you enough about how we're built. We're musical beings, and we're all made of frequencies and energy signatures and light. And so the gene keys, you know, there's these 64, and each one of them is a portal into the holographic universe. So each one is a jewel that you contemplate over time, and then it comes alive inside you. And each key has 3 layers to it. It has a journey. It's a transformational journey. So it has 3 words related to it. So, for example, the 6th gene key is the lower word, called the shadow word, is conflict. So that relates to conflict in, you know, like in the world today, wherever we see conflict. That's the influence of that code, of that universal key at work in a human being. And it's also imprinted in nature and in natural systems. So there's nothing wrong with the shadows. That's the first thing to say. And then inside every shadow is a gift, and the shadow is hiding in the gift, and it's a wonderful joke, of a kind of cosmic joke, in a way, that the greatest gifts are hidden in the deepest challenges. And that's the central teaching of the gene keys. That's what they're all about, that every shadow is where we begin our journey. So every difficulty, like we're facing a lot of difficulties in the world today as a collective, and it's bringing up a lot of individual fears, as you said, Chelsea. So you know, that's so if we take that 6th gene key, and I'll come to the 55 in a minute, then the gift of conflict is diplomacy, is the art, the creative art. The gift is diplomacy, to learn how to communicate with someone, to learn how to be intimate with someone, to learn how to be empathic with another person. And we learn that through mistakes. So we learn it from getting it wrong, and then over time we learn to open our heart and speak our heart, but we also learn to use our wisdom of what to say, when to say it, what not to say, how to say it, you know, timing, and all those subtle things that we have to learn that are part of diplomacy. And diplomacy doesn't mean, you know, these are words, but they lead to whole realms. So it doesn't just mean being nice, you know, it actually is a whole art of how to be with life, particularly how to be with others. And then at the top level, which is, you know, it's not really a top, but it's hidden inside, is what's called the siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word. And the siddhi is the divine emanation of that code, of that gene key. So inside every shadow is a gift, and that gift is a creative transformation of the shadow. And then out of that shadow flowers or fruits this beautiful siddhi. And the siddhi is our future, in a way. It represents, you know, our fully enlightened consciousness. So it's a manifestation of a fully enlightened consciousness. So in the case of that gene keys, the 6th gene key would be conflict, diplomacy, and then the siddhi is peace. And peace it's not just a cute word. Peace is the underlying nature of the universe. You know, that is, so every siddhi relates, it is a portal into the mind and heart of God, of the divine. And it's hidden inside us. So, and that's what the gene keys is here to do. It's here to trigger and help us work through these different codes that we face individually, and in our families, in our relationships, and in our society, community, and the world, and Gaia herself. And also our higher role, even our spiritual role within the cosmos. So it's a big body of wisdom. And, you know, as I wrote it, as it came together over many, many years, the one gene key that kind of took me by surprise was this 55th gene key, because it's about this time we're in now. And when I mentioned that a terma, you know, is for a specific time, the gene keys brings the specific message that comes out of this 55, number 55, right? And the keys come in pairs as well. So everyone has a pair, and the 55 is paired with the 59, and the 55 is freedom. It is the key for freedom. And its shadow is victimization. It's about the victim. It's about the victim consciousness. And everywhere we look, embedded in our basic human behavior and in our historical lineage and in our ancestral DNA, is this deep core embedded wound of the we are victims in some way, and it emerges as behavioral patterns, you know, sociological, geopolitical. Everywhere you see it, you see victims. You see victims and abusers, and that is the framework of our consciousness as it stands today, and we're growing and learning through it and beyond it. And that's what this 55th gene key points towards: freedom. And we learn a lot from this partner of it, which is the 59, which is about intimacy. You know, so the shadow is dishonesty and intimacy. So you have like victimization. The victim is about dishonesty. You know, they're rooted, they're connected together. Wherever we're dishonest with another person or with ourselves, we sow the seed of conflict and this victim pattern that then propagates more and more suffering. So intimacy is a really sweet thing, and I'll share with you all that, you know, I come here today. This is the first public event I've done for a while, because in the last I lost my father about 10 days ago. And when I say I lost him, I didn't lose him, I gained him as well. But he died due to COVID. And so I'm still in the stream of that. He was a wonderful man, and but one of the things that is very clear is when someone goes through the portal of death, and I've had two close people this year, my father being the second, then suddenly they become more available to you than they ever have been before, because everything drops away. You know, the personality drops away, you know, the history starts to drop away, all the objects, all the things, the place, the things that they're connected to, all drop away. The personality drops away, and the soul is suddenly fully available in its true intimacy. And so for me, in the last, you know, 10 days since he passed, I have been feeling the beauty of that intimacy. And I really, you know, it's especially profound when it's your parent, and he was a man I loved very much as well, and who loved me, and who many loved, actually. So that intimacy is about transcending death, you know, and that's what the ultimate victim state is. It's like it's to believe that we are this, you know, we are this shell, and that's what we're here to transcend and move through. And that's why we have the challenges that we have. So in our individual life, every challenge that comes to us that we face, whether it's a difficult relationship, a health crisis, someone we love in pain, you know, financial problems, hunger, whatever it is, you know, whatever the problem is, sexuality, wounding, you know, abuse, all of the thing, grief, you know, shame, blah, blah, blah. We know all the stories. It's here specifically for the purpose of awakening us to move beyond this state of thinking we are this. And I know that you've heard this story before. and yet fully embodying it is our, you know, that is our role, that is our task here. and to attain that level of freedom, you know, and ultimately it's freedom from, you know, it's freedom from fear, you know, and that's what this time is delivering us. And yes, we can get into the layers of the 55th, you know, the transmission of it, Chelsea, and I'm happy to, because it has so many layers, and it's very prophetic. It describes this time, and it shows us how there has, you know, there needs to be a crisis in order for there to be a breakthrough. And I think it's clear to most of us that the civilization that has grown up here on this planet in its current form is kind of rotten at its core in some way, even though there's lots of wonderful, great things that we've created. We've also lost touch with the most essential things. And, you know, a lot has to fall away in order for us to transmute this suffering that we carry, and to the pain of our mistakes and our past. That all has to be transmuted. And that's why the work with the Reiki and the work with these subtle bodies at this, you know, energetic level at this time is really important, because it's charging up the collective field, and it's helping process all this anguish that we carry in our physical DNA. Each one of us has come here carrying a weight, a burden, and that, you know, and the more light we have in our soul, the greater the burden we will have agreed to take on. And sometimes we forget, you know, we're like, oh God, this is like, I didn't sign up for this. You did. You did. You better believe you did. And it's because you're a great soul that you signed up for it. And you even signed up for it going, well, okay, if I take that load, I may even have moments where I forget and ask for it to be taken away. And yet that's not why we're here. We're here to transform it. And that means we move towards it, into the suffering, into the landscape of the wound, and we learn it, and we have to learn how it works, and we have to know it in ourselves and in its real intimacy. And then one day we become fully transparent, you know, when it, you know, that the future is beautiful. The future is also assured, but the journey of moving through the tunnel, through the wormhole, that is something that no one can predict how it's going to go. But that's the mystery play that we're in. So yeah, I guess I've said enough to start, but hope that.
That's beautiful. No, that's amazing. I love hearing that. I liked actually hearing about the Tama, and that we are actually in the time of Gene Key 55, because I actually didn't know that it was actually meant for right now, and that just felt that way. So that was really beautiful to express it like that. So I know that the Gene Keys is based on astrology, the I Ching, human design, and quantum physics. Those are the 4 components. Is that right?
There's more than 4. There are many, but those are some of them. Yes.
Oh my, yes. Okay. I'm just curious about the I Ching and how all of the, I guess I'm kind of curious about just the origin story and how all of these came together. I know it's a very long story, but I also think everyone here would really love hearing how this information kind of came to you.
Yeah, well, it's one of those funny stories. I'll keep it short because there's a lot of other things to say. But essentially, I woke up one morning, and I was in my late 20s, and I woke up one morning and everything was different. And I just woke up in my bed, and the moment I woke up, I was in a field of light, and I woke up into a mystical experience, into that I didn't know what it was then, but I woke up, and it lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, the experience. And it was a spontaneous experience in that way. And in those 3 days, I was kind of light. There was light just pouring through me. There was no resistance in my being at any level whatsoever. It was just all gone. And I can't tell you how it happened. And I just was there in it. And the light was streaming through me with no resistance, you know, and my aura, my field was vast. It was, you know, I was lying in this bed, and I was in a little cottage in the countryside in England, and I stretched out my arms, and I could feel my arms just travel hundreds of miles, you know, in every direction, and feel where they went. You know, they could feel the places and villages and people. It was the tendrils of light. It was intelligence that was pouring through me, and I had access to this intelligence. And so for 3 days and 3 nights, I had access to this higher intelligence, of which we all, you know, are part of it. And at times we've, you know, for some of us, many of us have had similar experiences, or we've had peeps into that, through that veil, or we've done it maybe spontaneously, or through a spiritual encounter, or through you know, plant medicine or something like that. And so for me, it was a spontaneous, unexpected event. And in those 3 days, I guess I was given what I needed to know. And then I went on a journey as well throughout England in those 3 days. It was very clear. I had a kind of clear voice in me telling me. It wasn't really telling me. It was my intuition, but it was just super, super, super clear. And it was just driving me. You know, it was like being in a limousine, and I just went, and it sort of spoke through me, and it interacted, and there's no it was me. It was my higher consciousness. It was God. It was all of it. Anyway, so in those 3 days, I took in this vast web of information that I didn't even kind of know how to process. And everything for me was experienced as a hologram. So every single thing was contained in every other thing. So, and everything that happened to me was a microcosmic, symbolic stage of the universe itself. So in 3 days, I lived the beginning, the middle, and the end of the universe in my body. And so I got to learn what the universe is, how it's built, you know, what its journey is, where it came from, and where it's going. And all of that is very difficult to explain. And after I came down from that experience, which was very difficult, you know, because once it kind of fell away back into the earth, I was left kind of a normal, ordinary, fallible human being again. And it took me a long time to integrate it. And I went through many phases, you know, phases of thinking I was the Messiah, phases of denial. I said that didn't happen. I'm going to be ordinary. Phases of trying to understand it and unraveling it, and maybe phases of psychosis and you know, a little bit of craziness at times. And eventually, yeah, it all started to come together. And funnily enough, when I met my wife, and you know, I started to get grounded. There was something about her presence in my life, this very grounded, earthy woman. And I've been with her now 20 years. And, you know, she's not really interested in this stuff. You know, it's not her path. But we've been together for all this time. We deeply love each other. But she's the anchor of this celestial, spiritual transmission. And she just anchors it. And she's an earth woman. She's, you know, a person and a mother and many other things. But that is when it started to kind of form something. And it took many years of me then processing and studying these other systems for it to kind of coalesce and eventually become the Gene Keys. And I started to write down my deep contemplations of the I Ching based on the experience I'd had. And so it came through the Art of Contemplation, which is what I wanted to talk about a bit here today, because it's how you access wisdom. You know, it's how anyone can access the field of wisdom that I accessed in those 3 days. And I've been able to access it ever since, not in the same way of like throwing all the wood, you know, the house was gone, you know, but now it's like the door is left ajar, and that's enough so that the wisdom can come in and it can be applied to any life situation. And it's not just knowing something, it's not knowledge, it's wisdom. So it's alive, and therefore it's connected, it's a part of love. It's love and the mind working together inside us. So you can't separate love and the mind. The mind is this incredible infinite, thing. It's infinity. And love is how it's carried. It's carried on the wings of love. So that's how the Gene Keys came into the world. And then they progressively, more people came into my life, amazing magical beings who were put in my path to help me unravel it. And I'm now part of a whole team and a whole community around the world who are working with the Gene Keys, exploring them, applying their creativity, their genius. And it's a collective tema, so even though I got the foundation of it, others are growing it. It's a garden. And so everyone's invited in the G. It's not like one of those things that you come and there's a teacher and the teacher's the one that knows. This is like everyone is in the garden. Each person is a plant. I'm this one oak over here, and there's this person over here. She's a beautiful willow tree, and she's growing in this way. And there's another person planting something over here and cultivating. And the wisdom is alive. It's following its own wild directions. So it's something a little bit different from many other things out there.
That's beautiful. And one thing I really loved what you said is the love isn't separate from the mind. And I think a lot of times in spirituality, it's operating in the space of no mind. But I really love the idea that the two just work so beautifully together. And I think you have a gene key, and maybe it's in the same gene key. And you talk about our relationship to emotions, and emotions being a means of communication, and our awareness kind of riding on top of emotional waves versus, using those emotions to kind of allow us to come to immediate decisions, because we're not just like in them, but we're kind of around them, and we're using them to get clarity. Would you be able to talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. Yeah. That's like, I use a lot of symbols in the Gene Keys to help kind of thread stories together. And sometimes that's easier for people to understand. And one of the stories that follows the Gene Keys, and you may have heard it, some of you, is the life cycle of the dragonfly. And on all the Gene Keys books, there's little dragonflies. And the dragonfly is really the symbol of the 55th Gene Key. It represents it really well. And we all know very well the story of the butterfly because it's such a wonderful emblem of the transformation of consciousness. And the dragonfly is very similar, but it has a slightly different energy to it. And it represents this victim to freedom journey really well. Because the dragonfly begins its life as a nymph. It's called a nymph, an underwater creature, and it's a predator, and it lives under the water for 2 or 3 years as this very successful predator, and it feeds on little fish and other, not fish, but little other kind of aquatic creatures down there, and it has no idea that actually hidden inside it is this flying creature. It's this other thing, and it's because it's it lives in its gray, murky, drab world down there. And then one day something extraordinary happens, and it happens quite quickly. Like suddenly some sleeping gene is triggered inside the dragonfly, and it does something it's never done before. It finds a stalk of grass or a reed or something, and it climbs up this stalk. It has legs, and it can climb up out of the water into the sunlight, and it's never done that before. It lives underwater. So this is like a fish coming out into the air, deliberately in a way. And so it comes up, it's this underwater insect. And then as soon as it gets up towards in the sunlight, it sort of freezes on the stalk, in the sun, like in the light. And it's never done that before. It's like, it's almost in shock, like, what have I done? And it can't move. and it's kind of, it clenches itself there. And then this process starts to work inside it. And there's this, like in the caterpillar, there's this incredible mutation, this molt that takes place as the water that's inside it is pumped into the creature within it. Right? So it's a hydraulic procedure. It's hydraulics, which means that water is, the pressure of the water pushes open the kind of thorax, which snaps open the back of the old creature. And then this thing inside, this spiral creature, starts to unravel like this. And then the wings open out as well, these 4 wings, and they're resplendent, they're iridescent. They have these colors that you've probably seen. And there's this creature suddenly, and left on the kind of the stalk of grass or whatever, the reed, is the shell of the old one still hanging there, and you can see these, in this process. And then this dragonfly is just sitting there, and it takes a puff of wind, and then it's gone, and suddenly it takes to the air, and it is this magnificent aerodynamic creature that has incredible abilities. And so that process is a really great, parable for our process, particularly now, because it's the energy of our shadow, of the underwater consciousness. It's the water itself, that pumps the new creature and forces it out into the light. So that's why it's so important to understand, because it's the shadow, it's the material energy of the shadow of our wounding, of our suffering, that actually brings us to the revelation. And it, and this is actually, according to me anyway, this is a literal story as well, because in humanity, the prophecy of this gene key and the whole gene keys themselves is that we are the dragonfly, and that there is a sleeping gene that has been triggered inside us, and it is forcing us, many of us, towards the light. And it's forcing us towards the light through work on our shadow. So we have to really come to terms with our suffering. And anyone that's really doing that inner work, that shadow work, that transformational work, those are the people who are the dragonflies, and because there's a lot of spiritual bypassing as well, isn't there? Like people that would like to do that and go straight to the light and not attend to the real deep wounding and the pain. And that's also a part of the journey, for some of us to learn that way, and then fall and then realize, oh, I didn't address something inside myself, and so, but that's part of awakening. So yeah, it's a very beautiful metaphor, I think. So yeah, and it's happening at a collective level in humanity. So we're seeing like the first dragonflies coming to the surface, and we're seeing this cracking of the shell, and it has to happen at a collective level. Imagine that all of humanity is one big dragonfly, and it takes all of those cells to propel it into this new eon, this new process, that we have to move through. We finish our life as a predator, as a victim, and the predator game, and we enter a new world. So at the moment, I guess what's important to say to all of you is, when we look ahead at the future, it has no continuity with the past. So what's coming is so different from what has been that most people cannot possibly imagine what it's going to look like. Same with the dragonfly. How can you possibly imagine that could come out of that? And that's what we're facing into now. And we're just beginning the journey. And the journey, like all births, is going to be fraught with difficulty and pain and a lot of suffering. And I don't say it lightly at all, because we can glamorize it. It's going to hurt. And we need to be real about that. It's hurting already. And this is just the warm up, first contractions.
Yes, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. And yeah, our festival, it's called Emergence Festival, and it's by the chrysalis, and it's that exact same analogy of the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis and doing the shadow work and really being in that shadow. That's so resonant and beautiful. And speaking of resonance, I know that you talk about music a lot and sound frequency, and you talked about in 1987 this harmonic convergence, and then in 2012 this melodic resonance, and then you said in 2027 the rhythmic symphony. Can you talk about what that is and what that journey is a little bit?
Yeah, it's you know, it's kind of part of the framework for this time that we're in. And the dates are kind of like, obviously we know the 1987, that's also linked in, as is 2012 with the Mayan calendar. And 2027 is a date that comes from the human design system, but it's also a really interesting date astrologically for lots of reasons. And I'm not an astrologer, but you know, astrologers will really have some fun looking at it. But in the human design system, it tracks the huge precession of the equinoxes, which shows us global themes. You know, so it shows us global themes through the gene keys, through these 64 themes of the I Ching. And it's in 2027 that we transit into the 55th gene key. So there's this big, you know, there's this huge shift into that key, and its associated keys as well, like I mentioned, the 59 and other ones. And so it's really moving us on a major trajectory into this symphony, you know, into rhythm, you know, because you have harmony and then melody and then rhythm. And it's not that they even happen in sequence in a way. And it's not that they happen suddenly on those dates either. They're markers. They're like genetic markers inside our body, inside our being, inside our collective, that will trigger these events. So sometimes you know, you get to those dates and you kind of, there's this expectation and nothing really much happens. But something does happen, but it happens at an invisible level in the collective. It's a marker point where a trigger is occurring. And it's the same as we're moving in this decade now, up to, you know, this decade of 2020 and 20, you know, up to 2027, this 7-year cycle to 2027 that we've started, that we're a year in. I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of unraveling in this time in order before we get to that marker. And then after that time, you might say that it's kind of in full swing, whatever the birth process is. So we're, as I said, we're building up towards it, and it's the names are really lovely, like harmonic, you know, melodic resonance, you know, and then, you know, because the melodic resonance is talking about the kind of the fractal, the groupings of people who are going to shepherd this process, the midwives, if you like. I call them the catalysts, who are going to shepherd this process, this birth, you know. And so it's now at the time where those people are meeting, connecting, collecting, work, coming together. That's what this time is for. In the next, you know, for anyone listening to this, in the next 5 or 6 years, it's really important to come together with those on the same wavelength like you are in this community, and begin to kind of bed down some real kind of grounded sense of community, relationships, build the bonds strong with each other, and then reach out to other communities and teachings as well who are doing the same thing, so that we're building this melody, you know, in preparation for the symphony that can begin, you know, after that date, 2027. And it will last hundreds of years. But it, you know, it's an incredible time to be born. It's an incredible time. And everyone that's born in this time, particularly those who are feeling the awakening, it's because it's why we've come for this. You know, we've come specifically for this, and yeah, we're going to help get this baby out.
I love that analogy. And I even love the analogy that you can either have a pushing, painful birth, or you can have an orgasmic birth. And my hope is that everybody on this call comes together so we can help have this orgasmic birth together.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah. So I know I've been asking a lot of questions, and I'd also love to open up this space because we have about 20 minutes left. And I know that you guys are probably dying with questions. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to share, go ahead and put them in the chat or take yourselves off of mute, and we can go ahead and answer some of those.
Hey, Richard, this is Lillian. I'm really excited to have you speak on here. So thank you for joining us and for everyone listening. I have a question since we're on the 55th Gene Key topic. There's a commentary where it states that if by 2012 you're not in resonance with a dream that is moving into form, your DNA will be locked out of the story. Are we saying that there are people that are simply not going to transform, or was there a different intention behind that statement?
Well, it's a bit of a heavy statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think there's, you know, I kind of hope it's wrong, you know, because things I've said, I, you know, you say things and then, you know, they can change. And I hope it's wrong, and only time will tell. But I think there may be some truth to it, because, you know, this is what the ultimate freedom is. You can evolve at your own pace, at your own speed. And if this isn't your eon, then your freedom is to return at you know, at a later date. And why not go at a slow speed if that's where you're at, you know? And so, yeah, I my hope is that everyone comes through the portal, but it may be that some elements are kind of just left behind for the next round. And so I don't think we need to sort of actually feel sad about it. It's just potentially an aspect of consciousness. And I think its value is that when we look at people today and we look at their behavior, it can give us more compassion, because we don't then have to insist that everyone get it. You know, we can just be like, okay, if you're meant to get it, you're really going to get it. And there may be some that just don't. And then there may be some who are on the cusp, and you never quite know until the very last moment. You know those people? We all know those people. You never know until the very last moment if they're going to come, if they're going to make it. You know, they're the ones that are always late and they just squeeze through. And some that just aren't ready. And I think it's great to have that sense of spaciousness to allow for all possibilities. Yeah, good question.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Dennis, I see your hand raised here.
Yes, such a pleasure to have your wisdom here today. Amazing. In my journey of the Gene Keys, I've enjoyed so many different things and tools that you provide in getting us to those places where we're in that higher frequency. Very powerful. Right now, I'm working on relationship and having that mirror of who I am through my relationship, which is amazing work. And I'm so thankful to be in that place. What I'm really fascinated with, because I work with quantum medicine and work with helping to nourish the body, one of the things that's helped me the most was the matches of amino acids to the Gene Keys. Been powerful for activating some of the sensations inside of me. Can you tell me more about how those factors play in our roles of making these activations in higher frequencies become more alive, and how you put that into the book and why it's there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I put all kinds of things into the book that I don't even understand. You know, And but I'm good at correspondences, so I know when something corresponds to something, because that was what I saw in my 3 days. I was shown correspondences. I was shown how that relates to that, and that relates to billion, and I saw all these, it's like if I was in a forest of trees, I'd be able to look at every twig and tell you which other twig it related to and which stone it related, do you know what I mean? It was like crazy being in the fractal cosmos. And so I put a lot of those things in for future people with more skills than me, because as I said, Gene Keys is a collective terma. So those are things for people like yourself who may have training in medical things, or in time, as we understand more about how to actually trigger amino acids inside our body, then that's a whole new medicine that can emerge out of that. And the Gene Keys at the moment is still in its infancy, because it's still growing different shoots. And every key has a relation, because every key is made up of 6 lines. So there's 384 of those, sort of base components. And every one of those relates to a series of like crystals, plants, animals, insects, trees, stars, everything. So through the correspondences, you can then look at, well, if you know your correspondences, like from when you were born, you can literally see in little places in your profile, in your what I call your hologenetic profile, which, by the way, if you've never done one, you can get from my website, genekeys.com. Top of the thing, free profile, go in there and you'll get it, and then you can start to puzzle it through. But in there, it has layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of detailing. So in time, my hope is that people with expertise will come together and work out how to use those things. But for me, I'm just the kind of messenger, but they're in there for waiting for people like you, Dennis, to kind of start contemplating them. The most important thing is really to come in and get the embodied, as you are doing the work, working it through your relationships, working it into your, into your health, into your body, into your life, so that then you have the grounding to dive into the deeper zones, like the one you're talking about, going into like microcosmic, which can give birth to a whole new kind of energy medicine, if you like. So yeah, that's going to be exciting to see where those things
Thank
go.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah,
that information.
Thank you, Dennis. I think I see Frank's hand raised.
Hi, Richard. Aloha from Maui. It's a pleasure and a privilege to see you, and thank you so much for being here. I am intimately familiar with your work, good friends with Theo and Devin Martin, and really enjoying all of the content and the evolution of the content that you've been putting out recently. I'd actually be curious to hear your remarks on the 55th gene key and the dichotomy with the 22nd, and maybe just involution versus evolution, and how you kind of see that as being applicable to the current times for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Frank, and nice to meet you. And yeah, so in a way, there's 2 of those gene keys. There's the 55, and then the other one that behaved in that way was the 22, which I always quite like, because I like the pattern of 55 and 22. They're kind of reversals. And whereas the 55 is prophetic and looks to the future and shows us, where we're heading, the 22 is the feminine version. It's like the lunar version, and it looks back in the past to help us understand our wounding and the journey that we're on, and the journey so that we can heal those wounds. And yeah, as you say, one is evolution and one is involution, and the involution, these 2 streams, so the evolution we know, because it's where we're heading. We're heading towards this process in the future. The 22 is more about involution, and being the feminine component, it's more about grace. And involution is about it's like, if you look from evolution it appears, if you're traveling from evolution's perspective, it appears that you are forging your journey through the void, through the choices you're making step by step. I am free. This is the freedom of the 55. I am free. I can go this way or this way or this way. I'm going to go this way. And you go, no, I'm going to come back and go this way. And so you have that freedom to choose. From the perspective of involution, it's completely different. From the perspective of involution, the choices are already made. Every single choice, even the one that you think you didn't make, or that you change your mind halfway through, that one was also made. Right. So both of our viewpoints of the whole, from the whole, and we can inhabit both in a way. And that's the paradox of the two. And what the involution shows us is it shows us that every step we take is a step of grace, because it is in a way perfect. And that's why everything that happens to us is perfect. It's revealed in time to be perfect. You know that, you know, in our lives, we have that thing you think, oh, really, really, this is the worst thing that could happen. And then a year later or a couple of years later or whatever it is, you kind of look back and you go, wow, that really changed my life. You know, and it was so, even though it was difficult, it had to happen for me to be here where I am now. And so that's the journey of involution, evolution. And it's really interesting to explore the feminine side, actually. And I'm doing that right now in a big course called the Venus Sequence. So I have multiple courses on my website, self-study courses. Many of them are live, like the one we're in at the moment is a live 6-month course exploring those wounding patterns. But you can do it through the self-study version as well. And it really takes you deep into the wounding that's inside us, and realizing that everything that happens to you, you know, when you're young, whatever it was, whatever abuse, whatever difficulty, however your birth was, however, you know, whatever happened to you, it was the perfect, you know, it can be understood in the frame of its perfection if you understand the wounding, if you really understand it, because there's algorithms that govern everything. And so the gene keys and the Venus sequence show you the algorithms that relate to your specific wounding. And they also show you the collective wounding of the whole of humanity and each step we take. So having both of those perspectives is actually what leads to a kind of non-polarizing view in the world. Like right today, there are so many polarizing views, okay? Because someone's inhabiting one side or the other side, you know, and if you can inhabit both sides, you don't get caught in that trap of I'm this side or I'm this side, you know, and you can still kind of prefer one side, you know, and that's also completely bona fide, you know, but you have to know both sides in a way. And that's wisdom, is being able to stand in at all levels of the duality and then transcend it.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you, Frank. Natasha, you have your hand raised.
Hi. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be able to speak to you, because I found Gene Keys in April, and it completely saved me, I think, through all of the hardship, to kind of look inwards. And the 22nd is actually my purpose. So I've been contemplating that one a lot. And yeah, I just can't speak enough about how profound the system is. And I'm in the Venus retreat now, and it's been so wonderful. But my question is more how to maybe speak to some of the more practical aspects of the art of contemplation. How to really like sort of use it in your day-to-day and really work with it once you start to have these sort of cerebral insights.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. That's a really great question. You know, I don't know if you've seen, I've just put out a new course, like a mini course on the art of contemplation. And it's based on my little book, Art of Contemplation. and which is a real lovely little treasure of a book. Short, you know, really nice way to begin your journey into the Gene Keys. It doesn't have too much jargon in it, and it gives you exactly what you've just asked about, Natasha. I don't know if you've read it yet, but inside it gives you kind of the pattern of what contemplation is and how it works. And it has these 3 layers. Everything in Gene Keys has 3s. It makes your journey easier if you know that everything has 3s, because then you just meet the same pattern over and over again, and it kind of feels familiar. And in the Art of Contemplation, the first phase is called pausing. And pausing is the ability to slow down your life. And it doesn't mean you slow down your external life. It means you learn to slow down your inner life, so that you're breathing more deeply, so that you're pausing to enjoy things, so that you're giving yourself time to just be, or time, you know, and there are many, many invitations that come to us each day. So the contemplation work invites you to look at your life through this lens. And the first lens is how many times, you know, might you be able to pause in one day? And as I said, there are many invitations to pause, but often we're not disciplined in some way, and we don't take those pauses. And it's a wonderful discipline because it leads to a more relaxing day. So, for example, you know, and things become habits, you know, that didn't before. So, for example, I almost always get up now before the sunrise and go and sit outside and just listen and watch the light changing. And it's magical to me because it's quiet, and there's always something that happens in my consciousness, and it's always different. And in the summer months, I often even go and meet the sun in the fields and stuff. But that's an example of giving yourself the space to pause and listen and let life in. And there are many other ones, like there are many practical things you can do to kind of bring this into your day. Well, one of the things we do at Gene Keys a lot in our communities is we linger. You know, I don't know if you've been on the calls, and you know, you start with maybe, you know, like the last one I was on, like 700 people, and then I always linger. You know, I wait at the end, and I linger and I linger and I linger, and we just sort of hang out and we talk a bit, and we just, you know, whatever comes out comes out. We stop the kind of teaching talk, and we just like hang. And sometimes it's 10 or 15 minutes, and the number goes din, 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 until you got about, like, you know, 20 of you. And they're the real lingerers, and the gems always often come there, you know, at the end, and sometimes there's silence as well. But that's an example of, like, you know, using your life as a way of, you know, seeing it as art. You know, because if you can pause, you will see more beauty around you than you can possibly account for, you know. And the aesthetic of contemplation is that you can't see that beauty unless you're pausing regularly. So that's the first phase. And I'll quickly do the other two. Inside pausing can occur pivoting. So if you have 100 pauses in a day, you know, and one pause can be just one of those at the right moment. You know, you're in the middle of the washing up, something catches your eye, and you just go, you put the towel or the thing down, and you just go, and you just hang there for a few seconds. That is a pause, right? And then you carry on. But when you carry on, things are different because you took that pause. And also, you find the timing improves. But if you take a lot of those pauses, you know, maybe in 100 pauses, one pivot will occur. And a pivot is a spontaneous kind of opening up to something new. And you can never predict them, but the more pauses you have, the more chances there are of pivots. And pivots are when our mind gets something new, or our heart opens in a way, or it sees something different, or it sees something more, and some shift takes place inside us that is unforgettable. So when you come to the end of the day, you can guarantee that that pivot will be the high point of your day. You'll be like, wow, something amazing happened today. Because I took a pause, you know, I stopped on the street to talk to one of those guys with the clipboards who I never give time to. I took the invitation, and I turned out I knew his cousin, and the whole story kind of comes because you took that pause. And they come in all kinds of different ways, pivots. And so a life filled with those pivotal moments is a life that's constantly transforming, and more light is coming through you because you're listening to life, you're letting it in. And the third aspect of contemplation is called merging. And so lots and lots and lots of pivots add up to a merging. And merging then becomes a part of who you are, because you start to merge with life, with the world, with others, with anger, with fear, with love, with, you start to you no longer contract away from things that you don't like, but you start to kind of move towards everything. And it's it's the field of love opening up in you, and the field of trust. And that's what the art of contemplation does. It may sound like it's a kind of mental thing at the beginning, but it's very physical. It's deep in your breath. It occurs. It's deep in the belly. As the breath deepens and your life starts to kind of open up in a new way. So on a practical level, if anyone's interested in kind of learning it, I'm doing a little pitch here. My new little online course. If you go to genekeys.com homepage, it's right there. You'll see new online course. It's $35. It's so cheap. It's my cheapest course because I want everyone to know it, because it's so beautiful. And you go in and it's very easy, and you get the book, and I'm reading the book in installments, and you can just take it at your own time. It's very mellow. It's very easy. Anyone can do it. Anyone, and you guys are like pretty advanced anyway, but sometimes the advanced people miss out on the simplest things. It's like, that one. A lot of nodding heads.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natasha. That was an amazing question, and I resonate with that comment too. Adam, I see your hand raised here.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Richard. It's such a privilege to meet you. I've been working with the Gene Keys on and off for about 2 years, and I was sitting here just thinking of what's most alive for me right now, and what I wanted to ask you your thoughts on. And for me, it's that so much of your writing seems to be about surrender and allowing and trusting. And yet I also find that if at a certain point I don't exert my will on my life, it can get very stagnant. And at a certain point, if I'm forcing my will on my life, nothing happens because it's not meant to be. And I guess I just wanted to ask you your reflections on that duality and how to discern what right will is, or if there is such a thing, and what surrender is.
Great question, Adam. Thank you. I think it's an old chestnut, isn't it? Like you're given, if a problem comes your way, let's say, you have two possible journeys with it. One is the warrior. I'm going to fight, I'm going to take it on. And the other is surrender. I'm going to just let it wash over me. I'm just going to yield. I'll give you an example from my life. It's like just from last week, right? When I went to see my father, and and then he was lying there, and he was, he'd left his body, and the next day I was out in his garden. He lived in this lovely house, and I've been to visit him a lot in the last year, just spending a lot of time with him, feeling that he was coming close to the end, and there's this huge Wellingtonia tree, like a redwood, in his garden, and it died about 2 years ago. It started to die, and every time I visit him, I saw it and it's the kind of guardian tree of the property. It's beautiful. And I'd say to him, that tree needs to come down. It's right next to the house. It's real presence. And he didn't want to do it for some reason. He didn't really want to go there. But then the first thing I did after he died is get the tree surgeons to come and take that tree down, for many reasons. But it was dead, and it was like it could have fallen on the house. Anyway, so in the first week they came, and they were kind of a motley crew. They were kind of this bunch, and like, and I kind of knew that I was being kind of, sometimes that you're being played, and I could sense like these guys are, they're kind of wheeler dealer, they were asking a bit too much money, and they weren't telling me all the truth. And they were like, I could just see, like, I could say, you're going to sell the logs for this, you're going to make a lot of money, aren't you? And he's like, no, we can't do anything with the logs. No. And I just kind of let it go. And I noticed it inside me. And I thought, I just thought I can take the warrior stance here, or I can take the surrender stance. And I was kind of debating which one to take. I thought, if I take the warrior stance, which is the stance for justice, which is the stand, like, I'm not going to be ripped off, you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes, I'm, and then I have to meet them, and then I'm facing them, and I can do that, like, I can definitely do that. Like, I know I can go down that journey, and many people would do that. And yet I was in this heart space. And so I chose the other path. I said, I'm just going to let it go. And I thought, it's a hard time for everyone. Those guys need a bit of extra money, especially that guy that brought that tree down. I thought, he was like amazing how he did that on his own. And I thought, just let him have a bit of the extra money anyway. It doesn't matter. They don't even, you don't need to go there. And so I just let it go, and it gone. And then I was able to just be with them as a crew. And I didn't have this kind of, I'm going to have to kind of take you guys on. I just let them believe that they kind of, whatever they wanted to believe. It wasn't all of them either. It was just the kind of leader, really. And it felt good. And I was able to even communicate with him in a very loving way, because I was able to say, you guys did a fantastic job. It's like, really appreciate it. And, and then I was sort of thinking, after they'd gone, I thought, well, I won't be recommending them to anyone, but it's like, what the hell, So in a way, we have those choices, and it depends on, where it depends on where we want to go. Sometimes you got to stand up for what's right, and you just got to do it. And other times you can let it slide, and you can just take a different path. And they're both incredibly valuable. And I wouldn't stake one over the other. It's just, as you said, discernment. You can't make a wrong decision, and you might even change your mind halfway through, But yeah, at this time, that's part of, I think, learning to be wise. Like, you learn to just go with whichever one flows through you, and you trust in it utterly. So yeah, there you are.
Thank you so much. That's a great story.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I see a question in the chat. I think this is a question on oneness and duality. Flaxus Art, would you like me to read it for you, or would you like to speak it? Is this a question for Richard? If our multi-dimension.
Thank you so much. I think it was already part of his answer, but I had this question written before you were talking about this experience, about this story, because for me as an artist, it's always very important to have more than dualism. One of my favorite artworks is like a skyline of Dubai, which is like a mirror effect. You have the skyline, and I put this skyline in black and white because we are living in this dualism. So the people are educated like doing something right or wrong, being good or bad, healthy or ill, rich or poor, and all this stuff like men and women, all the separations. So all the separations means for me, it's not freedom, it's not equality, it's not, there are, as long as separations are there, there's the bridge is missing. And so I took the mirror effect of this piece of art, of this image, and I left all the colors into the water, because water is a basic element for all living. And this means for me equality. This means for me it's an element we were born of, the water, and we are combined with the water, because the water today is the same as the water like the dinosaurs had in their bodies. So the water is just circling around. It is part of our all life and existing. And so, yeah, therefore I asked this question: if we are choosing like right or wrong or black and white, I think, yeah, it is. I think there's no solution. We will never find a solution as long as we separate.
Yeah, I think you said it. I think it's absolutely true. And also, you know, today, where everything is divided into very sharp poles around the world, good and evil, you know, awakened people, sleeping people, you know, however you look at it, there's different levels. But actually, you know, if you look at the universe through the Aboriginal mind, the indigenous mind, you don't see things in that. They don't, you know, those people tend, I don't want to generalize, but that those views, I would say, don't tend to see in those terms in the same way. And there's a really interesting theory. It's called standpoint theory. I don't know if, you know, I know we have to finish soon, but and the theory is that, you know, on all the extremes, you know, you have all these different views of politics and, you know, people like spiritual people, material people, all that. And at the very edges are these people who have like extreme views, and they can be extreme, like, so they're not really extreme, like, so like indigenous people are like they're right on the fringe of society, of our modern society, right? But this theory says that the people on the fringes, their views bring incredible power when you bring their views to the center, because they like when you really understand the viewpoint of someone who's on the fringe and you integrate that into the whole, it has a much more powerful balancing effect on the whole than anyone else in the, you know, any other viewpoint, you know. So it's really important that we listen to those views that we kind of, you know, don't understand, you know, and we understand, and we want to try and empathize, like, how did you come to this view? I want to know, you know. And it's part of that journey I started with diplomacy. Like the diplomat is the one that knows how to listen, but doesn't ask loaded questions, just wants to listen, wants to understand. And when people are understood and they're heard, it's of great value to the whole, to the collective. And I think this is, you know, really a key in the years ahead for our society, is integrating those more, like, the views that aren't heard, you know, like, which is we're beginning to do with the Black Lives Matter and all kinds of, you know, other movements that are being heard, and extreme ones as well. But it's important to hear all the viewpoints, you know, because then we hear all the nuance and we can see the whole thing, and it means that our view is less kind of black and white. We're more able to flow through all the different views, and we can even appreciate the beauty of the whole, all as one. So
spectrum of colors and spectrum of personalities and meanings.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we are getting to the end of our session here. Richard, I would love to kind of bring this back into our initial intention of talking about kind of the state of the world that we're in. And if you have any words or parting advice that you could give our community and really just the light workers around the world in general around these next few years as we're leading up to these really significant dates, potentially 2027, what would you say for us?
I'd say learn to pause, really. You know, let your days become, you know, go the opposite way of everyone else. You know, when I say everyone else, like, let these be the years that you relax more and more deeply into your being, into your belly, into your body, into your creativity, you know, so that as the world's going in the direction of decline, you go in the opposite direction. I wrote an article some while ago about if I could find it somewhere on my website, it's about entering the storm of the time coming ahead. And there's loads of stuff on my website, like if you just have to dig, and it's all in there. It's about entering the storm. It's about the dervish entering the storm, the cyclone, you know, and the dervish goes out into the storm and opens their arms to it, and is then is like inspired by the storm itself, instead of rushing indoors and hiding away. And I think that's the attitude that we need. It's like someone was saying earlier, that is it going to be a birth of pain, or is it going to be orgasmic? You know, it's going to, you know, is it going to be ecstatic? You know, and I think that what's needed is a breed of ecstatics, you know. So we're required to, you know, and ecstasy, you know, is a misunderstood thing, because ecstasy comes from going deeper into our suffering. You know, it doesn't shy away from grief and all those feelings and stuff, but it punches through and finds, like, it's like my couple of weeks have been, you know, the letting go of my human side of my father, and then the acceleration of our relationship through and intimacy of knowing him in a new way, or remembering him in a much more open way, but then also missing his lovely gentle presence of just being there and, you know, chatting, and obviously, and the familiarity of that. But so both of those held together, you know, are what leads to the ecstatic view. Ecstatic isn't only positive high, you know, it includes the suffering, you know, it includes and transcends. And that's what kind of, you know, that's what gets us there. That's what will take us all the way through this birth. You know, that attitude, that courage, you know. So, and build community, you know, build community, build, you know, build bridges with everyone that you feel devoted to. You know, wherever, I guess that's the most important thing. Like, wherever you feel there's a devotion between you and another, build that energy, build a castle out of that, you know, and don't waste your time if it's not there. You know, if it's not there and it's not kind of showing signs, like, you can be friendly, but don't pour your energy into that place. You know, pour your energy into the devotion area. And even if there's only one relationship in your life that has that, that's the place to put your efforts and your work and your, you know, build something with that person, whether it's a relationship, a business, an idea, something. Use that energy, that soul to soul energy, because it has awesome power in it, and it's a sign from God or from the whole that this is a person that you want to be working with, right? So yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for being here, for speaking at Emergence Festival, and for doing this for all of us.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yes. Would everybody be able to take themselves off of mute and rub your hands together, generating some energy? And Richard, we have a phrase that we say called Ashtahe. It means I am you being me. So can we give Richard a little Ashtahe love?
Ashtahe. Blessings to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Ashtahe. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Come and visit Gene Keys. Come and join our fun community all around the globe, and you're very, very welcome, everyone here.
Beautiful. Thank you, Richard. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So we put all of the links in the chat here. We have the Gene Key links, we have the courses, we have the Venus course. If you want to click on those links, you guys can join those courses. I know that I've been a part of them, and they have been very special. Amazing. So we are going to take a little stretch break as we transition, because we're going to do some breath work next. How do you guys all feel about taking a little stretch break? Yes, all right. So go ahead and we can stand up. We're gonna move our bodies a little bit. Bryant Wood is gonna come on next, and we're gonna do a little movement. So I'm gonna put on a song. I know you guys know this one because we had it on earlier. And I'm gonna put it through my speaker so we can have some music here. Amazing. Was that good, everybody? Did you guys like that? Yay.